Hello everyone, and it's been a while since I have discussed The Merchant of Venice. So today I thought that I should continue the Merchant of Venice part because it is quite extensive and the syllabus is really tough. So today I am going to discuss the Merchant of Venice. So in the last videos, children, I discussed about the life of Shakespeare part 1 and life of Shakespeare part 2. In life of Shakespeare part 1, we discussed a few things about how William Shakespeare was born, how he was raised, and how he went to school, and then he was forced to join the business of his father. And in the second video, we discussed how William Shakespeare developed himself as a writer and how he enhanced his writing and how his works have been divided into 4 different periods. And we discussed extensively, we thoroughly discussed all his plays and all his important tragedies, plays, poems differently. Now, today, we are going to have a real introduction to the play Merchant of Venice. Merchant of Venice has really mixed up, jinxed characters. So we really need to know all those characters really well in order to understand them when we read the entire scenes, we read the entire acts. So when we start reading the story, it is really difficult for us to understand when the character emerges out and we don't know who he or she is connected to or how is it important in the play. So we really need to have a brief knowledge about the characters before we start any story or we start any play or tragedy. So as we know that Merchant of Venice is a romantic comedy. We have a happy ending, as all romantic comedies do have their endings. So let us move on to the characters of the Merchant of Venice, and before that let us have a small introduction to the play The Merchant of Venice. The moral lesson that we get from The Merchant of Venice is mercy. In modern language, we may call it tolerance instead of mercy. William Shakespeare has tried to bring out the contrast between the idealistic and realistic opinions of society and relationships, which makes Merchant of Venice different from his other plays.
Most probably, The Merchant of Venice was written around the year 1596. It belongs to the middle phase of the dramatist's career. The evidence of rhyme, versification, meter, and general atmosphere also indicate that it must have been written between the years 1596 and 1598. The main source for this play is an Italian tale taken from the collection named Il Pecorone by Sir Giovanni. The Bond story is taken from there, for it is only here that we get the story of the rings along with the pound of flesh story. The casket story was taken from the Gesta Romanorum, in which we find the inscription on the caskets in almost the same words as in the Merchant of Venice. Shylock's arguments in the trial scene may have been suggested by 95th declamation in Sylvain's Orator. Shakespeare himself added the Lorenzo Jessica love story and Launcelot Gobbo. He has borrowed the bare minimum and has made much better of what he has borrowed. The treatment is his own. The ways in which he has transformed and perfected his material is indeed a fascinating subject of study. The plot consists of two main stories, the Bond story and the casket story. To these main stories have been added the Lorenzo Jessica love story and the ring episode. The following steps may help you visualize how the action of the play is structured around the problem of Bassanio's death. Act 1 Exposition, Act 2 Rising action, Act 3 Climax, Act 4 Denouement, Act 5 Conclusion.
Now in Act 1, which is the introduction of the play, the story, is an exposition which tells us how the story begins. And we get to know few things about the many things which is happening in the play. Few things of the many things that is happening in the play. We don't get to know all the things. And not one, not two, but more than two stories are running in one particular story. So we need to understand each and every story very, very nicely. And in order to understand all the stories, which ultimately is going to be a one complete story, we need to understand the root cause of each problem, the root cause of each story. That is the exposition. The opening act introduces us with the Bond story and the casket story. It also introduces us with the four main important characters of the play, that is Antonio, Bassanio, Shylock and Portia. The merchant of Venice, the rich merchant of Venice, that is Antonio, is the protagonist of the play. Protagonist means the main character, the hero of the story. Bassanio is his best friend. Portia, who is the female protagonist of the play, means the heroine of the play. And Shylock is the antagonist of the play. Antagonist means the villain of the story. Also, we get to know that Bassanio declares his intention to go to Belmont and win Portia in hand of marriage. But to do so, he needs some money. So, Antonio borrows money from Shylock for Bassanio. The audience also faces the difficulties that stand in the way of Antonio while he has borrowed the money from his biggest enemy, and that is Shylock. Because Shylock has made him sign a bond. Simultaneous growth occurs in both the stories, that is the casket story and the Bond story. Complications occur in between Antonio and Shylock, which is related to the bond. A letter comes which tells us, which informs us about the ventures which have failed miserably. Those ventures belong to Antonio or some other person, we will find out soon. Portia is a widely famous girl. She is clever, beautiful and very, very rich. So many people, many suitors come across from all over the world to win her in the hand of marriage. In this particular scene, in this particular act also, we find some suitors who have come to woo Portia in terms of marriage. Also, there is another twist to the story, and that is Jessica and Lorenzo's elopement. Now, let me tell you the meaning of elopement. Elopement means bhag jana, to run away. And we get to know that Jessica, Shylock's daughter, runs away with Lorenzo. Now Jessica is a Jew and Lorenzo is a Christian. So this heats up the enmity between Antonio and Shylock. Just because Shylock's daughter is a Jew and she has fled away with a Christian heats up the vengeance that is running inside Shylock's veins since a very, very long time. He hates Christians and especially Antonio. Now this particular reason has given him the chance to take a revenge from Antonio. Now that Antonio has lost his ships, his ventures have failed, Now it is the perfect time for Shylock to take his revenge. So the story heats up and we move on to the climax part, which is in which the story is at its peak point. Now, moving on to Act 3, which is the climax of the story. We get to know that Bassanio wins Portia. But there is a rumor that Antonio has lost all his ships and the problem of the debt is urgent more than ever. And he is unable to pay the loan. Now, moving on to Act 4, which is the denouement of the play. Now let me tell you first what a denouement is. Denouement means the end result of a story. The resolution of the Bond story is carried on by Portia. She intervenes in the story. Portia, who is the heroine of the casket story. And we get to know the conclusion of the story. In Act 5, which is the conclusion to the story, we get to see that there is a celebration going on where all the lovers have gathered in Belmont. Belmont is home to Portia. Portia is its heiress. And we also get to know that Antonio's ships have returned safely and there is an all-round merriment.
The setting of the play is not in familiar London but the remote Italian Venice, the city of canals. While Venice exists on the map, Belmont is imaginary. The Venetians, like Antonio, are rich merchants who are highly honored in society. There are also rich noblemen who live splendidly. Some of them do not hesitate to borrow money to maintain an extravagant lifestyle. Bassanio is such a young spendthrift. The society is predominantly Christian. The Jews are aliens, victims of Christian oppression. They are hated. Shylock and all other Jews are embittered, frustrated, and vindictive. It is a world of love and friendship, of music and song, of culture and refinement, of moonlit gardens. It is a romantic world where a rich heiress is wooed and won through the lottery of caskets. It is a world of wealth and luxury. Life goes leisurely by. The talk is of music, of ancient mythological lovers. There is a wit coupled with vivacity. Nature is at her very best. Venice and Belmont are two different worlds, reality and romance. The Duke of Venice. His role in the play is to uphold the law. Prince of Morocco and Prince of Aragon are the suitors to Portia. Antonio is the merchant of Venice. Bassanio is Antonio's friend and a suitor to Portia. Salanio, Salarino, and Salerio are friends to Antonio and Bassanio. Luciano is friend to Antonio and Bassanio and is in love with Nerissa. Lorenzo is friend to Antonio and Bassanio and is in love with Jessica. Shylock is a rich Jew and is also the antagonist, which means the villain of the story. Jessica is Shylock's daughter. Tubal is a Jew and also Shylock's friend. Lancelot Gobbo is a clown and a servant to Shylock. Old Gobbo is Lancelot's father. Leonardo is Bassanio's servant. Portia is a rich heiress who lives in Belmont. Nerissa is Portia's lady in waiting. Balthazar and Stefano are servants to Portia. Other than that, small characters such as Magnificos of Venice, officers of the Court of Justice, Gaoler, servants to Portia, and other attendants have been used.
Please make notes of all the things that I have said and I have written in the particular video, in the following video, and please go through the video again in order to understand it vividly. In the following video, I discussed a brief introduction to the play The Merchant of Venice, and I also explained the characters that have been used in the play. Learning the characters means learning half of the story. It is not easy to learn all the names of the characters in one go. So slowly and steadily you will learn and memorize all the characters. But it will be easier if you make a family tree. Making a family tree will make you learn which person is connected to whom. In the next video, I will start Act 1, Scene 1. Act 1, which is the exposition. We are going to have a brief understanding of the play, and the casket story and the bond story will be introduced. Up till and until then, please make notes of this particular video, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you. Goodbye.